This is Pawn Power Hour.
I have a chess question in reference to peace trades, middle game. Is being a pawn up in the middle game enough to try and trade everything down to a winning endgame? I'm always afraid I'll come up short.
Depends on whether it's a winning endgame or not after the trades. Don't trade your good pieces for his bad pieces.
What you're about to witness here is an intense in-game battle. Take a good look at the position. Here it is black to move. Queen c7. At first sight, you see that white has a queen, rook, and bishop versus black's queen and two rooks. So we can say that black has bargaining power. But look closely. If the rook on d4 moves, then queen to h8 is a problem. And one dangerous possibility for black is the queen to g7, which would check the king on b2 should the queen on c3 leave that square. It's not just the monetary value of the pieces, but it's the position that is on the board. If rook takes f4, then black is in trouble. Queen h8 check. King to f7 is the only available square. Rook to e8 with a discovery on the king because of the bishop on c4. And after rook takes c4, then checkmate with either queen to g8 or queen to f8. Both moves lead to mate. So instead of taking the pawn on f4, black challenges the rook. White declines the trade. Rook d8. Pawn to h5. The idea is to loosen the king side. White needs avenues of attack. Notice how the rook on d4 sits there. The rook is acting as a blockader to keep the queen off of h8. Also, the bishop on c4 is white's strongest piece in this position. Finally, black captures the pawn on f4, but also notice the weakness around the king on f8. As I said before, when doing calculation, three types of moves are threats, checks, and captures. Queen to e3 sets up a battery on the e file. Now the threat is rook to e8 check. Rook takes c4. And now rook to e8 check. If king to g7, then rook to e7 wins the queen. So king to f7. What move shall white make? Pawn takes the rook on c4 or set up another threat. Rook to h8. Now the threat is rook takes h7. Now the position is razor sharp. Black has to be very careful. Now the choices here for black are rook f4 and queen f4. We're going to take a look at both of them. The first choice we're going to take a look at is rook to f4 to block the check. So rook f4. Can you spot the move in this position for white? What move would you make for white in this position? And now queen takes h5, check on the king. And no matter what black does, the queen will be lost after the next move. Rook takes h7 check. King takes c7, and now the rule of thumb is that passed pawns are to be pushed. Pawn to g6, push the pawn again. Pawn to g7. Rook to g6, threatening to capture the pawn. What move should white make? That's right. Pawn to g8 promotes the queen. And no matter what black does, one rook will be lost. Do you see the move? Rook takes g8, queen to f7 check, forks the two rooks. And from this moment on, all white has to do is walk the dog. Kitty by the door, bye-bye kitty cat. Another fork. Save the rook or save the pawn. Now let's return back to the starting position. The move we're going to take a look at now is queen to f4 to block the check. Notice that the rook on c4 is still hanging, and white looks for more opportunities. Queen takes h5 check. The pawn on h7 is hanging. Should queen takes h7 or should rook take h7? Queen takes h7, forces the king off the 7th rank. King to d6. White continues to take squares away from the black king. King to c5 and king to e5 are the only two available squares. We're going to take a look at both moves. If king to c5, then queen takes a7 check. The rook on d8 cuts off the d file, and now finally white captures the rook on c4. Check. And here the queen on f4 is lost after queen to a4 check. Now what happens if the king goes to e5? King e5. And now pawn takes the rook on c4. And from this point on, it is a matter of in-game technique. And now let's go back here. After queen takes h7, queen f7. In between move. Pawn captures the rook on c4, queen takes h7, followed by rook takes h7, and after the king moves, rook takes pawn on a7. Now white is going to demonstrate in-game technique. King b3, rook e3 check, pawn to c3, king to b6, and rook f7. Now the trick here is to set up a bridge. Now the king has to get into the game. Remember, the king is a defender in the endgame and also an attacker. Notice how white is starting to switch the position of the king. After king c4, king d2, rook to g3 threatens to capture the pawn. Is it really a threat? No. Examining closely, this is white's plan, to march the king all the way up to f6 in order to nurse the passed pawn. And we can see that white is winning. King takes c3, king e5, king d3, king f6, rook g3, pawn g6, king e3, pawn to g7, king d4, and now rook g5, and the bridge is made. The pawn will promote. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for Pawn Power Hour Part 3.